The day began the way good memories always do, quietly, without warning, pretending it would last forever. The lake sat still under the North Carolina sun, a sheet of glass broken only by drifting leaves and the slow ripple of paddle boats. Children laughed somewhere down the shore. A dog barked. The air smelled like sunscreen, pine needles, and something cooking on a nearby grill. It was the kind of afternoon families took photos of, the kind they framed. Laura Bennett noticed the smile before she noticed anything else. It wasn't wide. It wasn't forced. It wasn't even inappropriate. And yet it lingered just a second too long. She stood near the picnic table, adjusting the strap of her handbag, watching her husband Marcus help their daughter Ava step onto the dock. Ava was 22, newly graduated, full of plans and opinions and impatience. Her younger cousin, Elise, 25, hovered close by, phone already out, filming the water like it might confess something interesting. Behind them stood Ryan Cole. Ryan had been part of their lives for years, long enough that Laura had stopped remembering exactly when he first arrived. A friend of Marcus's from work. A familiar face at holidays. Someone who showed up with wine when invited and sometimes without when not. Reliable. Helpful. Quiet. Too quiet, Laura thought now, though she couldn't explain why. Ryan's eyes weren't on the lake. They weren't on Marcus. They were fixed on Ava. Not openly. Not rudely. Just attentively. Laura told herself she was imagining it. She had a habit of doing that, reading between lines that weren't there, sensing storms before clouds appeared. Marcus teased her for it. Called it her true crime brain, a joke born from too many late-night documentaries. Still, the smile stayed with her. Everyone ready? Marcus called, clapping his hands together. Boat leaves in 5. Ryan stepped forward smoothly. I'll help load the cooler. I've got it, Marcus replied. Ryan hesitated, just a beat too long, then nodded. Of course. That pause, barely noticeable, sent a small, sharp discomfort through Laura's chest. It was gone as quickly as it came, swallowed by conversation and laughter. She told herself she was tired. Overthinking. Being dramatic. Ava jumped off the dock, landing lightly beside Elise. You filming everything now? Evidence, Elise said. In case this turns out to be the worst day of our lives. Everyone laughed. Ryan laughed too. A soft sound. Practiced. You always say that, he said, his voice warm. And yet you're still smiling. Ava glanced at him, grinning. Optimism is dangerous. Or brave, Ryan replied. Laura watched the exchange closely. It was harmless on the surface. Casual. Friendly. But something about the rhythm felt off, like a song played half a note too slow. She caught Ryan looking at Ava again. When their eyes met, he smiled politely, then looked away. Her pulse quickened. She leaned toward Marcus. Has Ryan been around more lately? Marcus shrugged. I guess. He's been helping me with that promotion paperwork. Why? No reason, Laura said quickly. The boat horn sounded. They boarded in pairs, laughter echoing across the water. Laura sat beside Elise. Marcus took the rear, handling the motor. Ava stood near the front, hair catching the sunlight, wind lifting loose strands around her face. Ryan positioned himself across from her. As the boat pulled away from shore, Laura felt it again, the quiet certainty that something was wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet. Just misaligned. Ryan spoke easily, telling a story about a work mishap that ended with everyone laughing. He was charming when he wanted to be. Attentive. Observant. He remembered details other people forgot. What Laura noticed was what he didn't forget. He remembered Ava's favorite drink. He remembered her schedule. He remembered the exact day she moved back home temporarily after graduation. He remembered things Laura herself sometimes mixed up. At one point, Ava shivered as a breeze swept across the lake. Cold? Ryan asked immediately. I'm fine, she said. He reached into a bag and pulled out a light jacket. You left this in my car last week. Ava blinked. Oh. Right. Thanks. Laura's throat tightened. Last week? Her car had been in the shop. Marcus had been working late. She hadn't known Ava had been riding anywhere with Ryan. She told herself it was nothing. Of course it was nothing. Ryan was a family friend. That was the point. Still, Laura found herself counting the seconds between glances, measuring the space between words, listening for what wasn't said. When the boat reached the far end of the lake, Marcus cut the engine and let it drift. "Perfect day," he said. Ryan nodded. "Some days are meant to be remembered." The way he said it made Laura's skin prickle. She looked at Ava, who was laughing at something Elise had said, unaware of the weight in the air. Unaware of the attention fixed on her. Unaware that a line, once faint, once ignorable, had already been crossed. Laura opened her mouth to say something. Anything. Then the boat rocked slightly, the moment passed, and the smile returned. And just like that, the last normal afternoon of their lives slipped quietly into the past. Trust did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, wearing the face of familiarity, the comfort of routine, the quiet confidence of someone who never gave you a reason to doubt them. Ryan Cole had entered their lives 7 years earlier, back when Marcus was still fighting for a permanent position at the firm and Laura was juggling long hours with the exhausting optimism of someone who believed stability was just around the corner. Ryan had been the colleague who stayed late, the one who shared vending machine dinners and mutual frustrations about management. "He's solid," Marcus had said after their first dinner together. "Not flashy. Just steady." Laura had liked him then. He listened more than he spoke. He laughed at the right moments. He brought a bottle of wine that wasn't expensive but was thoughtfully chosen. When Ava, barely 15 at the time, wandered into the dining room asking for help with homework, Ryan had excused himself politely, as if he understood where he did and did not belong. Back then, boundaries had existed. Over time, they softened. Ryan became the extra chair pulled up to the table on short notice. The familiar knock at the door on weekends. The one who remembered birthdays without reminders. The one who helped Marcus move furniture, fixed a broken fence, watered plants while they traveled. He never overstayed, yet he was always there. Laura noticed things gradually, the way people notice mold. By the time you're certain it's there, it's already spread. When Ava turned 18, Ryan began speaking to her differently. Not inappropriately. Not openly. Just with a careful attentiveness that felt adjusted. He asked about her classes. Her goals. Her frustrations with dating. He offered advice that sounded thoughtful but lingered just a little too personally. "You're more perceptive than you realize," he told her once, during a family barbecue. "Most people your age don't see the world that clearly." Laura had been flipping burgers at the grill when she heard it. The word stuck with her long after the smoke cleared. She told herself she was being protective. Overly sensitive. Ava was an adult now, 22, confident, independent. She rolled her eyes at concern and dismissed warnings with a laugh. "He's harmless," Ava had said. "He's basically an uncle." But Ryan wasn't an uncle. He was too close in age. Too present. Too aware. Elise noticed it too. "Does he text you a lot?" Elise asked one night, sprawled across Ava's bed, scrolling through her phone. Ava hesitated. "Sometimes. Just checking in." "About what?" "Life. Stuff." Elise raised an eyebrow. "That's vague." Ava shrugged. "He listens." "That's rare." Listening had become Ryan's greatest weapon. He collected confessions without asking for them, grievances without judging them. He positioned himself as the safe place where frustrations could land quietly. What he never shared was how deeply he absorbed those details, or how carefully he used them. Marcus, for his part, saw none of it. Or maybe he chose not to. Ryan was dependable. Ryan was supportive. Ryan was there when Marcus's father passed, standing slightly behind Laura during the funeral, offering silent strength. Ryan brought food, handled errands, answered late-night calls without complaint. "He's practically family," Marcus said more than once. Laura felt the phrase settle heavily in her chest. Family was supposed to be safe. It wasn't until Elise moved in temporarily, fresh from a breakup, uncertain and restless, that the dynamic shifted in a way Laura could no longer ignore. Ryan's visits increased. His timing was impeccable. He arrived just as Ava returned from work. He stayed just long enough to share inside jokes and private conversations before excusing himself with polite restraint. "You're lucky," Elise whispered to Ava once, half joking. "You've got someone that invested in you." Ava didn't respond immediately. Laura overheard them from the hallway. Sometimes, Ava said slowly, it feels like he knows what I'm going to say before I say it. Elise laughed. That's not creepy at all. Ava smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Laura's unease sharpened into something colder, recognition. She began replaying old moments, Ryan remembering Ava's schedule better than she did. Ryan noticing changes in Ava's mood before anyone else. Ryan's subtle irritation when Ava talked about dating someone new, masked beneath concern and carefully worded advice. You deserve better, he had said once. Someone who really sees you. The phrase echoed now. At dinner one night, Marcus mentioned that Ryan had offered to help Ava network professionally. He's got connections, Marcus said. Could be good for her. Laura set down her fork. Did Ava ask him? Ryan answered for her. I just suggested it. No pressure. His smile was calm. Reassuring. Laura studied him closely. For the first time, she wondered whether that smile was less about kindness and more about control. She met Ava's eyes across the table. Ava avoided her gaze. That was when Laura realized something had already shifted. Trust had not been broken, it had been redirected. And somewhere along the way, Ryan had moved from the outside in, quietly replacing roles that were never meant to be his. The night ended normally. Dishes were cleared. Goodbyes were exchanged. Ryan hugged Marcus, nodded politely to Laura, and lingered just a moment too long near Ava. Text me when you get home, he said casually. We live here, Laura replied before Ava could speak. Ryan blinked, just briefly. Then he smiled. The first thing Laura noticed was the silence. It was wrong for a Saturday morning. No music drifting from Ava's room. No muffled laughter from Elisa's late-night phone calls echoing down the hallway. No footsteps pacing toward the kitchen in search of coffee. Just stillness. Laura stood at the base of the stairs, one hand resting on the banister, listening. The house felt hollow, like a space that had exhaled and forgotten how to breathe again. Ava, she called. No answer. Elise? Nothing. She climbed the stairs slowly, her unease growing with each step. Ava's bedroom door was open. The bed was neatly made, too neatly. Ava never made her bed unless she was running late or trying to impress someone. Her phone wasn't on the nightstand. Laura's heart began to race. She checked Elisa's room next. Empty. Clothes folded on the chair. Shoes still lined by the wall. Her charger plugged in, cord dangling uselessly. They went out early, Laura told herself. Together. Coffee. A walk. Except Ava had texted her the night before, promising to help with errands that morning. Except Elise had complained about being exhausted and swore she would sleep in. Laura hurried back downstairs and checked the front door. Locked. Back door, locked. Their cars were still in the driveway. That was when fear stopped being theoretical. Marcus was in the garage, sorting tools. They're not here, Laura said. He glanced up. Who? Ava and Elise. Marcus frowned. They probably went out together. They don't have their cars. Marcus hesitated. Maybe Ryan picked them up. The name landed like a dropped plate. Why would he? Laura asked sharply. Marcus shrugged. Networking thing? Coffee? He mentioned something yesterday. Laura's chest tightened. She hadn't known about any plans. She pulled out her phone and called Ava. Straight to voicemail. She called Elise. No answer. Marcus's confidence wavered. I'll call Ryan. The line rang twice before Ryan answered, his voice calm, unhurried. Morning. Hey, Marcus said. Did you happen to see Ava or Elise this morning? A pause. Barely perceptible. No, Ryan said. Why? They're not home. Well, they're adults, Ryan replied lightly. Probably out enjoying the weather. Laura watched Marcus's face harden. They didn't tell us, Marcus said. Ryan exhaled softly. I'm sure it's nothing. Laura reached for the phone. Did you make plans with them? Ryan hesitated again. I mentioned grabbing coffee at some point, he said. No set time. Laura felt a surge of anger. That's not an answer. Ryan's tone shifted, smoothing itself back into place. I haven't seen them, Laura. If I had, I'd tell you. The call ended with reassurances that felt thin and rehearsed. By noon, panic had fully bloomed. Laura called hospitals. Friends. Anyone who might have heard from them. Elise's mother arrived frantic, her voice shaking as she demanded answers no one had. By mid-afternoon, they called the police. The officers were calm, methodical. They asked about recent behavior, relationships, stressors. They used words like voluntary absence and cooling off period. Laura hated every one of them. They wouldn't just leave, she insisted. Not together. Not without telling anyone. The officers exchanged looks. Is there anyone who might know more? One asked. Laura and Marcus answered at the same time. Ryan. When questioned, Ryan arrived at the house within the hour, composed and cooperative. He answered every question politely. He showed text messages, friendly, non-committal, carefully worded. No indication of distress, he said. They both seemed fine. Too fine, Laura thought. She noticed his hands. They were steady. That night, Laura sat alone in Ava's room, clutching a hoodie that still smelled faintly of her daughter's perfume. The house felt wrong without them, like a song missing its chorus. She replayed the lake. The smile. The jacket. The way Ryan had known things he shouldn't have. She realized, with a clarity that stole her breath, that the disappearance hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been approaching for a long time. And someone had been walking toward it calmly, confidently, long before anyone else knew to be afraid. The second day without Ava and Elise did not feel like a continuation of the first. It felt heavier, denser, as though time itself had thickened and slowed, forcing every minute to drag its weight behind it. Sleep became theoretical. Laura sat at the kitchen table as dawn crept through the windows, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Marcus paced, stopping only to check his phone again, as if the right number of glances might summon an answer. The police returned that morning with questions they hadn't asked before. What was the last confirmed sighting? Who did they trust? Was there any tension in the household? Laura answered until her voice cracked. Then the questions changed. Did either of them have reason to leave willingly? Were there disagreements? Any romantic entanglements? Marcus bristled. They're not runaways. The detective nodded patiently. We have to ask. Laura watched his pen hover over the page. They trusted someone, she said quietly. The detective looked up. Who? Laura hesitated. Saying the name felt like betrayal, and like truth. Ryan. The room shifted. They began with his phone records. Nothing alarming. No frantic calls. No threats. Just steady communication with both women over months, more than Laura had realized. They spoke often, the detective said neutrally. Too often, Laura replied. Marcus sat back hard in his chair. That doesn't mean anything. But doubt had already slipped in, unwelcome and sharp. That afternoon, Laura did something she hadn't told anyone she was considering. She opened Ava's laptop. She wasn't proud of it. She justified it the way desperate people always do. I'm her mother. I need to know. What she found made her hands shake. Long message threads. Carefully crafted conversations. Ryan offering support, encouragement, understanding. Always measured. Always present. One message, sent weeks earlier, stood out. Sometimes the people closest to us don't really see us, Ryan had written. You deserve a life that fits you, not one you're expected to live. Laura closed the laptop and pressed her palms to her eyes. She thought of Elise, freshly vulnerable, heartbroken, searching for stability. Elise, who had once joked that Ryan felt safer than most people. That night, Marcus confronted Ryan. Not angrily. Not accusatorily. Just directly. You were close to them, Marcus said. Ryan nodded. They trusted me. Did you encourage them to leave? Ryan's eyes widened, wounded. Of course not. Then why does it feel like you knew more about their lives than we did? Silence stretched. They talked to me, Ryan said carefully. I listened. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You're not their parent. Ryan stiffened. No. But maybe they needed someone who didn't see them as extensions of themselves. Laura stepped forward. Where were you yesterday morning? At home. Alone? Yes. No witnesses? Ryan met her gaze. Are you accusing me? Laura felt the room hold its breath. I'm asking, she said. Ryan's smile returned, slow and deliberate. Then ask the police. And they did. They searched his apartment. Found nothing incriminating. No signs of a struggle. No personal belongings belonging to Ava or Elise. But something was off. He had recently cleaned. Too thoroughly. The detective noted it quietly. By the end of the week, the town was talking. Whispers replaced greetings. Speculation clung to Laura like dust. People chose sides without realizing it. Some said the women had run away. Some said Ryan was misunderstood. Some said Laura was controlling, that Ava needed space. The worst part wasn't the suspicion. It was the realization that trust, once broken, didn't shatter loudly. It eroded. Slowly. Silently. And as the days passed, Laura became certain of one thing: the truth wasn't missing. It was being hidden, by someone who knew exactly how to stay calm while everyone else fell apart. Obsession does not announce itself with violence. It disguises itself as care. Laura came to understand this too late. The 5th day after Ava and Elise vanished, the detective returned with a box of printed records, call logs, message summaries, timestamps. He spread them across the dining table like playing cards from a game no one had agreed to play. Ryan's contact with them was extensive, he said carefully. Marcus leaned forward. They were friends. Yes, the detective replied. But friendships usually ebb and flow. This one didn't. The messages showed a pattern that made Laura's stomach tighten. Ryan messaged Ava every morning. If Ava didn't reply within an hour, he followed up, never demanding, never frantic. Just checking in. Hope your day's starting well. Did you sleep okay? If Ava replied briefly, Ryan expanded. If she withdrew, he reassured. If she vented, he validated. Every emotional door she cracked open, he slipped through quietly and made himself comfortable. With Elise, the tone was different but no less intimate. You don't owe anyone your happiness. Sometimes starting over means leaving everything behind. You're stronger than you think. Laura's hands shook as she read. This wasn't friendship. It was cultivation. The detective continued. He rarely initiated group conversations. Almost everything was one-on-one. Marcus stared at the table. Why didn't we see it? Because he didn't want you to, Laura said. That evening, Laura drove to Ryan's apartment alone. She didn't tell Marcus. She wasn't sure why, perhaps instinct, perhaps the quiet certainty that if this conversation was going to reveal anything, it needed to be unfiltered. Ryan opened the door with his usual calm expression. Laura, he said gently. You shouldn't be alone right now. She stepped inside without invitation. His apartment smelled faintly of disinfectant and citrus. Clean. Too clean. The furniture was arranged with precision, as if no one ever truly relaxed there. Why them? Laura asked. Ryan tilted his head. I don't understand. Yes, you do, she snapped. Why Ava? Why Elise? Ryan sighed, as though she were asking something unreasonable. I cared about them. You managed them, Laura said. You studied them. Ryan's voice softened. Someone had to listen. Laura laughed, sharp and humorless. That's what you tell yourself? Ryan's composure cracked, not fully, just enough. They were unhappy, he said. You were too busy pretending everything was fine. Laura stepped closer. And you decided that made them yours? Ryan straightened. I never said that. You didn't have to. Silence fell between them, thick and revealing. Finally, Ryan spoke again. You want someone to blame. I want my daughter, Laura replied. Ryan looked away. That was the moment Laura knew. He hadn't taken them out of rage. Or desperation. He had taken them out of certainty. The next day, the police uncovered something Ryan hadn't erased. A storage unit. It wasn't rented under his name, but the payment trail led back to him. Inside, they found personal items, Ava's scarf. Elisa's notebook. Nothing violent. Nothing overtly criminal. Just proof. Proof that the women hadn't vanished on their own. Proof that someone had been planning for their absence. Ryan was brought in for questioning again. This time, he didn't smile. You think obsession is loud, he said calmly. It isn't. It's patient. The room went silent. And for the first time since the disappearance, Laura felt something worse than fear. She felt certainty. The story Ryan told began to change, not dramatically, not recklessly, but in the way a careful liar adjusts details once he senses the walls closing in. It started with small things. He had said he hadn't seen Ava and Elise the morning they disappeared. Then he admitted he might have crossed paths with them briefly near the lake road. Later, he clarified that he'd only spoken to Ava, not Elise. Each revision was subtle, wrapped in reasonable explanations. Memory, he claimed, was unreliable under stress. The detective did not argue. He let Ryan talk. Laura watched from behind the glass, her nails biting into her palms as Ryan leaned back in his chair, posture relaxed, voice calm. He looked like a man discussing logistics, not the last person known to have influence over two missing women. "Why hide the storage unit?" the detective asked. Ryan smiled faintly. "Because I knew how it would look." "How does it look?" the detective pressed. Ryan paused. "Like I cared too much." That was when the jealousy surfaced, not as anger, but as confession. Ryan spoke about Marcus with a tight smile. About how Marcus never listened, never noticed the emotional shifts in the room. How Laura clung to structure and missed what mattered. He spoke about Ava as if she were a misunderstood masterpiece, and Elise as a soul waiting to be rescued. "They trusted me," he said again. "I gave them space to be honest." "You isolated them," the detective countered. Ryan shook his head. "I offered clarity." The cracks widened when phone data placed Ryan's car near the lake the morning of the disappearance, earlier than he'd claimed. Surveillance footage showed him entering a cafe alone, then leaving 30 minutes later. No Ava. No Elise. "So where were they?" the detective asked. Ryan's jaw tightened. "I don't know. But the evidence told a different story." Text messages sent from Ava's phone that morning, messages Laura hadn't seen, were drafted, not sent. Saved. Unfinished. "We're going somewhere quiet. Don't worry. We just need time." They read like rehearsals. Then came the scandal. A former coworker came forward. A woman in her 30s who said Ryan had once fixated on her during a vulnerable period, offering help, support, escape. When she pulled away, he vanished from her life completely, as if she'd never existed. "He doesn't explode," she told police. "He replaces." The town turned on itself. Some defended Ryan fiercely. Others accused Laura and Marcus of negligence. Online forums dissected Ava's life, Elise's choices, Laura's parenting. Truth became optional. When Ryan was finally arrested, not for murder, but for unlawful restraint, the reaction was divided. Half the town exhaled. The other half protested. Laura didn't celebrate. Because arrest wasn't resolution. In the interrogation room, Ryan finally looked tired. "They wanted to leave," he said quietly. "I just helped them do it." "Where are they?" the detective asked. Ryan closed his eyes. "Safe." Laura's reflection stared back at her from the glass, older, sharper, unrecognizable. She realized then that the most dangerous lies weren't the ones Ryan told. They were the ones people wanted to believe. And somewhere, two women were still missing, caught in the space between obsession and freedom, waiting for the truth to fully surface. The truth did not arrive with a confession. It arrived by accident. 2 weeks after Ryan's arrest, as the town settled into a tense, divided quiet, a park ranger from a neighboring county called the task force. He had been reviewing maintenance footage after a report of vandalism near an old retreat property, once used for youth camps, now mostly abandoned and forgotten. On the footage, grainy and partially obscured by overgrown branches, a familiar car appeared. Ryan's. The timestamp froze Laura's breath. The morning after the disappearance. The property sat deep in wooded land, nearly an hour from the lake. No cell service. No nearby residences. The kind of place you only went if you already knew it existed. Search teams moved in immediately. They found no signs of violence. No blood. No restraints. Just life, paused. 2 neatly made beds. Food stocked in a small refrigerator. Personal items arranged with care, as if someone had tried to recreate normalcy in isolation. Ava's handwriting labeled containers in the kitchen. Elise's jacket hung by the door. And on the table, a letter. It was written by Ava. She did not sound afraid. She sounded convinced. She wrote about needing space. About wanting clarity. About being tired of expectations, noise, pressure. She mentioned Ryan, not as a captor, but as a guide. "He understands what it means to start over," the letter read. "He showed us how to disappear without being lost." Laura collapsed when she read it. Marcus read it twice, searching for coercion between the lines. The twist came when the forensic psychologist weighed in. "This isn't a kidnapping in the traditional sense," she explained. "It's something more insidious. Ryan didn't force them physically. He reframed reality until leaving felt like their idea. Brainwashing. Grooming. A slow psychological migration. But there was one problem. Ava and Elise were not there. They had left days earlier. And Ryan hadn't gone with them. In fact, phone records confirmed something shocking. Ryan had returned home alone and resumed his routine, attending work meetings, answering messages, pretending nothing had happened. He hadn't followed. Because he hadn't planned to. During his final interrogation, Ryan finally broke. "I gave them the tools," he said, voice shaking for the first time. "The courage. They didn't need me anymore." The detective leaned forward. "You let them go?" Ryan nodded slowly. That was the hardest part. Laura realized the devastating truth. Ryan hadn't wanted to keep them. He had wanted to be the reason they left. And once they did, once their lives were erased and rewritten, his purpose was complete. The disappearance wasn't the end of his plan. It was the proof of his success. Somewhere out there, Ava and Elise were alive, free, convinced, unreachable. And the most terrifying part was this. They might never want to be found. By the time the truth settled into Laura's consciousness, it felt like a weight pressing down from all sides. The physical danger had passed. Ryan was in custody, confined, recorded, cross-examined, his meticulous calm replaced by quiet tension. But the emotional damage, the erosion of trust, was far from over. Ava and Elise remained missing, not abducted in the traditional sense, but psychologically removed, guided by a subtle manipulation that had taken years to perfect. They were alive, but unreachable, living a life crafted by someone who had quietly infiltrated their world, convincing them that what he offered was freedom, understanding, and clarity. Laura wandered the empty rooms of her home, each corner a reminder of what had once been normal. The lake view from the kitchen window was still breathtaking, yet she couldn't see it without feeling a cold twist in her chest. The laughter that had filled the hallways, the easy conversation around the dinner table, the casual smiles shared on sunny afternoons, all had vanished with her daughters and her niece. Friends tried to comfort her. The town murmured in hushed tones, offering advice, blame, sympathy. Marcus leaned against her shoulder, silent but present. He no longer argued with her suspicions. He no longer laughed off her instincts. They had learned the hard way that intuition was a dangerous, necessary companion. Ryan's trial loomed. He faced charges of unlawful restraint, manipulation, and psychological coercion, but nothing could capture the scope of what he had done. No law could fully account for the years of quiet obsession, the subtle erosion of trust, the invisible chains he had laid without anyone noticing. The court could punish him for actions, but not for the minds he had rewritten. Laura realized that the most insidious danger often came from the familiar. The person welcomed into homes, celebrated at birthdays, trusted with secrets, and positioned close to the most vulnerable hearts, the person no one suspected. A friend. A helper. A confidant. Someone who could observe, calculate, and quietly steer lives without resistance. She remembered the first day at the lake, the lingering smile, the jacket offered, the attentiveness that had seemed benign, even kind. It was in retrospect terrifying, a harbinger hidden in plain sight. She had ignored it then. She had brushed it off. She had assumed safety because it wore the mask of familiarity. And yet, there was no rage in her reflection now. Only clarity. Trust, Laura understood, was not simply a gift. It was a responsibility. And once misdirected, it could unravel everything it touched. She had learned this too late, but she would carry it forward, a warning for herself and, she hoped, for anyone willing to listen. Months later, letters arrived from Ava and Elise, postmarked from distant towns. They were alive, healthy, insisting they were finding their own way. Their words were measured, polite, careful, yet they spoke of lessons learned in silence, of growth that could only come from being unmoored. They did not mention Ryan directly, only the strange gratitude for the guidance they had received and the peace they had found in absence. Laura read each one, hands trembling. She felt relief, tempered by grief. Relief that they were alive. Grief for the time lost, for the innocence that had slipped away, for the trust that had been violated so subtly it felt almost invisible. In the quiet of the night, she whispered to herself what she had learned: the greatest threat is not always a stranger at the door. It is the person inside the home, the friend who knows too much, the one who observes too closely, the one whose intentions are masked by smiles and helpfulness. And perhaps the cruelest part of the lesson was this: even when the danger is removed, the echoes linger. The silence of the missing, the empty spaces, the knowledge that manipulation can be disguised as care, they do not fade. They follow you. Laura understood now that vigilance was not paranoia. It was survival. And the story of Ryan, Ava, and Elise would live on, whispered among families and towns, a chilling reminder that the safest walls can sometimes hide the darkest threats. It was a lesson learned too late. But it was a lesson that would never be forgotten.